Hello and welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me is my co-host from the way back, and that would be Wild Ute, who's
What's
back
up?
from his family. Oh, what would you call that? It was like a month long you were gone, right, Ute?
The family road trip throughout France. Yeah, so
And we're
it's
all
nice to speak
jealous.
some English with some folks.
Well, I'm not sure you're going to get English tonight, but you'll certainly get something more distinguished than France.
No doubt.
Anyway, and then our two partner contributors, that would be Immaculate View and Moen Show. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, guys.
So I don't know. I'm still tired from last night. We're going to talk Washington and Texas a little bit later in the show. We're going to have both Becca, Go Huskies, and Sergeant Pickles are going to join us a little bit later. Depending on how long that takes, we may preview or talk about the game afterward. But we're going to start off with some other stuff first and then move into things later in the bowl games. First of all, I want to encourage everybody. Thank you for being here tonight, the day after New Year's. Everybody's still maybe a little hungover, but we're glad you're here. Please, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and then follow us all on Twitter. And then make sure you turn on your notifications. That way you know when the show is really going. Let's just jump right in. You've been gone the most. Two questions to you. Do you see any purpose to bowl games anymore? And two, what did you think about the two playoff games?
Oh man, if there's any purpose to bowl games, absolutely not. There's no purpose to bowl games anymore, and not just this year and last year, but going forward and looking at next year, when we've got a 12-team playoff. We have that many games. Nobody's going to give a rip about the Mayo Bowl or the Pop-Tart Bowl or the Vegas Bowl. Really, it's going to be all about those playoff games. So I'm at the point where these bowl games are such crap that I think you should just kick them off, honestly, and just eliminate the bowl games completely and just play the playoff games or expand the playoff field because you're going to get enough games as it is in that. And I'm so sick of seeing third stringer quarterbacks, second stringers and just crap games. And we'll talk about the Florida State game, but that game was absolute garbage pile. Even going back to the Utah game that was played a couple weeks back with Utah's, third string quarterback still. I mean, it's just a crap football game. It's not a good product. It's not good for the sport, and it needs to change. All that saying about bowl games, really the two games yesterday were fabulous, fantastic, guys. Like some of the best games that I've seen for years and everything. Of that first game, Michigan, Bama, they're going into overtime. All the excitement there. It looked like Bama was going to pull away at the end there. Michigan comes back, ties it up, goes into the overtime, and they pull it out. That was a fantastic viewing experience. I mean, we know that Michigan's cheaters and everything. They should have never been there in the first place. But outside of that, just for the football, it was great product. And watching Washington actually come back, just take Texas and score on them all day long and move the football on them, seeing Penix be a superstar. Can't wait for that guy to be in the pros. It was a great viewing experience and just a fantastic day of college football. So I loved it.
Before I ask the same question to Moen and Immaculate, we have as our first guest tonight, we don't have a ton of time, Becky, but I wanted to get your initial thoughts about the playoff games last night. And then kind of where do you see Washington's tuning up for their game next week?
Yeah, sorry, my voice is really bad.
I think it's understandable why that is.
Yeah. Big deal. Don't know if anybody saw it, but Dylan Johnson the running back got hurt in the last minute.
I was going to ask you that. What's his status?
He's expected to play.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they said they're going to do another test, but the X-rays inside the Superdome came back negative. So
okay,
he's had a bit of a foot problem. So
okay,
but Grubb said today on the radio that he's expected to play. So it's a big deal.
You see, I'm wearing our Huskies jersey. I've had it on for the last 3 days. So I made sure I had that before the game showed up last night. What are your two takeaways from that game last night?
First off, the offense could do whatever it wanted.
Right.
The Texas D line was pretty much nothing for the O line. The Sweat's a great defensive tackle. He recorded, I think, he didn't have a single tackle for loss. He had 3 total tackles. Pretty much a non-factor in the entire game. If we wanted, like 5 yards, we could just throw for it.
Right.
Texas had no answers. But overall, just a really good game. Texas did play exceptionally well against the run, like I think everybody thought they would. One thing that they didn't game plan for was Penix actually getting out and running.
Right. He was a little more agile than he's been. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they were designed runs, so it wasn't like anything that Texas did. Like they put almost no pressure on him all game. The story is if you can get him off his spot, he'll be less accurate and all that. No, he just moved the pocket himself if he felt the need and just continued to make plays. Everything he did was look downfield. And I mean, I think we're spoiled here in Seattle with him as quarterback because he is. I don't know about how you guys feel, but that's the best play I've ever seen from a quarterback in college football history. Like that was ridiculous.
I was thinking about Vince and the USC Texas game was the best personal play that I'd ever seen in a playoff or a bowl game like that. And I kind of looked at him the same way.
I mean, like they weren't open on some of these throws, and he was just hitting them. Right. I don't know if anybody saw that. They were not open a lot of. He just put the ball right where the defender could not get it, and it's like,
absolutely.
I mean that was an absolute missile to McMillan on the touchdown.
That was a laser beam. It was on a rope. Absolutely.
He threw that through a guy's arms on a rope, like to the back of the end zone. That ball was thrown like a good 30, 40 yards, like on a line. Like that's something you would see from like ESPN compared it to Ichiro throwing from right field to third base. That's what it looked like. And it's like the same distance.
And I think that throw by itself was just a microcosm of the rest of the game. He was doing BBs all day long. So, Ute or Moen, Immaculate. We only have Becky for a little while, and then of course we have Sergeant Pickles coming on later. Why don't you guys ask her some questions?
I want to know, Becky, like, what's like your thought process now? Like, I mean, Washington. This is like even the 1990, the national championship. This is the closest you sniffed like a national championship. You're right there on the doorstep. Like, what are your thoughts about like what's everything's going on here?
Well, like yesterday, I was so nervous I wanted to puke. Like we got a whole week of that.
No, I bet you wanted to puke in that final minute.
Oh yeah, no, we were sitting at the bar just cussing up a storm. Everybody's like, "What are we doing?" No, when they got down to the 12 and it was first and goal, I was like, or first and 10, I was like, oh my God. I was like, we're going to lose. But, because that's just being a Seattle sports fan. It
is.
That is our thing. Boomer knows this.
Yeah, that's exactly the way it is.
No, it's just the whole thought process now is like looking at Michigan and just like trying to figure out that defense is really, really good. And, you can say whatever you want about Alabama. That was not a typical Alabama offensive line performance at all. So I am trying to figure out, was that Alabama or was that Michigan?
This was that once every 10-year SEC down year. Yeah.
So it's like, what are we looking at here? As far as like, they're blitzing. I mean, they blitzed Milroe like I can't even describe it. It felt like they blitzed him every play, and they had the spy on. We're not going to get the spy, but I'm more curious now. Like, can we hold up in protection because they were on Milroe quick? So it's just the little things I'm looking at. Like, Michigan plays real defense. Like, no offense to the rest of the Big Ten, but that is legit defense. Like, you cannot just go in and just basically shut down an SEC team who has more 5-star recruits than some conferences. It's to hold them to, like, 10 points for basically 3/4 of the game is insane, in my opinion. And then to basically, shut it down in overtime with, absolute penetration. Say what you want. I don't know what the play was. I think it was blown up by a low snap, but yeah, all of that. So it is just like just sitting there going, okay, like you see it on the screen. We got to play yet another team with a blue chip ratio. We don't have one.
Right.
Yeah. Can you see the screen, Becky? Are you seeing the blue chip?
Yeah. I can.
And are you familiar with the blue chip ratio?
A little bit. It's just like it always. The only thing that ever gets me is like the definition of what a blue chip is. I feel like depending on who you talk to or what year it is, it changes. But
for this metric, it's pretty simple. It's if a recruit is considered a 4 or 5-star prospect. So you just take all your 4 and 5-star prospects, add them together, then divide them by your whole roster size. So basically, do you have more 4 or 5-star recruits than 3 or 2-star recruits, right? And that gives you a ratio. And you can see here, Bama in like the 90%. So they're fielding 90% 4 or 5-star recruits,
which is just insane. If you,
it's nuts,
it's
right?
Insane.
Nuts.
Washington's sitting around like the low 40s, and I'm curious on your take with that too. So like there's a theory out there that the blue chip ratio is essential for winning a national championship. You've got to be over a 50% mark, and history kind of speaks that out. Like most teams have reached that bar where over 50% of their whole roster is a 4 or 5-star recruit. But there's been 1 or 2 instances where that hasn't been the case. I think Auburn, when Cam Newton was on the team, I think that they were below that bar. So what's your thoughts on that? Like, I mean, Washington sitting like in the 40 range, like, do you think there's any validity to that? Like, do you have any view on
that? Well, I mean, this is where like psychologist in me comes out looking at data. The data supports it. I mean, name it. Like everybody on that list has won a national title, but
Texas A&M,
like a handful of schools, like
Oregon,
Florida.
Notre Dame hasn't won one in over 40 years.
Yeah, the only ones that haven't won are just like A&M, Oregon, Notre Dame, and Penn State.
Yeah.
Everybody else on the list since the year 2000 has won a national title, which is it's there. And then when you see things like Oregon's last trip to the playoff was against Ohio State, and they got obliterated.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it just makes sense. And then, there's no Florida State, which is the only outlier, by the way.
I want to ask Immaculate and Moen the exact same question. What do you guys' feedback about this? Because obviously Iowa's not on the list, but we know Ohio State's on there. How do you guys look at that?
Well, I would say I actually think Washington proves this is not a perfect science. When you look at them and their offensive line wins the award for best offensive line. When you look at their receiving room and it's the most, maybe Ohio State could argue against this, one of 2 the most elite recruiting rooms in the country. And I say, oh, that's not a blue chip ratio program. So what were they? 3 stars, 4 stars? Are these the only ones on the entire team? It's hard to have the best offensive line team and not have some on there. Iowa used to do it, but generally speaking, that's not the case. So I think that there are certain areas of the country when it comes to blue chips that get more look and other areas that do not, particularly like when you look at Washington and you have a lot of people on the line and there's Samoan there. I don't see numbers that show that like some of these communities get looked at as much, yet these kids have a lot of talent. You get this out of the South when you see this. It's a lot of what these teams are. It's guys coming out of the South who's doing this work. So it's interesting, and it's a statistic that you can say shows something. But I think you could also point to it and say, no, I don't necessarily think this is a necessity. It just makes it easier.
Moen.
Yeah, in college football, it comes down to recruiting and development.
Yeah.
You can recruit all the 4 and 5 stars you want. If you don't develop them, you're not going to be a successful program. Washington has done an excellent job of developing players, whereas these other teams have mostly recruited them with some developing them. Ohio State develops wide receivers or wide receiver U right now. Alabama defensive line U right now. So a lot of it comes down. I think it's an overblown metric because you don't know who's going to pan out and who's not going to pan out.
Sergeant Pickles. By the way, when Becky signs off, Pickles, if you want to join us, you can dial in. But his comment, I think, is spot on. There are plenty of people in the Pacific Northwest that swear by blue chip ratio. We call them Duck fans. And it's true. It's true.
Off-season natty. They always win
That's
the
right.
off-season
They
natty.
do.
So.
Yeah. Them and Texas A&M.
And the Ducks are sitting at 67%. That's actually surprising. I mean, I wouldn't think that they're that high, but dang.
Oh, yeah.
Uncle Phil's money, come on.
Right. All right. So preview for us. Oh, sorry. Did you have a different question? Somebody?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think, like, when you look at these, we do have 4-star recruits on the team. It's not, like, so
Sure.
lopsided.
Right.
There just happen to be more 3-stars, but the big three, like,
Yeah.
Roma
For all we
Dunze's
know,
not a
you could be
3-star.
49%. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
really know where you get. I mean, it's,
Roma Dunze is not a 2-star player.
no,
We'll just
that
say
guy
that.
is
He
a
was,
stud.
he was a 4-star, but Michael Penix was a 3-star. Braylon Trice, the Russian, he was a 3-star. Our starting linebacker, Eddie Ulafascio, he is a walk-on from Anchorage. He was a 2-star.
Yeah. Development is huge, like Moen said.
Mhm.
That is a big deal. It's a big part of it.
He got developed under Peter. A lot of these guys got recruited and developed under Peterson. So,
Right.
and there's just, everybody just has to still be there.
All right.
I'll sign off, but awesome time.
You don't want to
guys.
give us a quick preview about next week's game?
We got to hear it, Becky.
Yeah.
Gotta get your preview.
How's this going to go?
I'll tell you how it's going to go. It's going to be lower scoring than what you're used to from Washington. The limelight's not going to get to them. I think the limelight is going to affect, personally, after watching yesterday's games. You can't disagree that Michigan wasn't the most nervous team playing out of the 4.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Like, outside of the center for Alabama, I mean, there was nobody else more nervous than, the returner for Michigan, and then of course throwing a pick essentially on the first play of the game that that eventually got overturned. But no, I think nerves are gonna be there for probably the first or 2 series for both teams. The team that makes the first mistake will be the team that probably falls behind the fastest. I will say, just like quick observations. If Michigan doesn't put pressure on Penix, they're going to get picked apart. They don't have, they have some good corners. They have a good scheme. They played zone all day yesterday.
Yeah.
They cannot play zone. If you play zone against Washington, you're going to get eaten alive because, like I said, we go 4-5 deep at the wide receiver position. We got two tight ends. Westover is highly underrated, but man, if you want a circus catch, that dude will provide it.
That's absolutely true. In fact, the whole team had some fantastic catches. Honestly, the game was wider than the final margin because that Washington fumble, muffed punt or whatever you want to call that, that was a huge mistake, right? And they had a chance to go down and get a touchdown right away. So they both made mistakes, but
So my quick thing. Michigan's going to try and run the ball, keep Penix off the field, which is smart. I think they're going to Harbaugh knows this game from playing in the NFL and coaching in the NFL. Keep the better quarterbacks like Brady and them off the field. You have a chance to win. I think Washington they're going to score. They're going to score pretty quickly at times. I would say to Michigan fans, like, that's probably your thing. You're just going to have to, Michigan fans are going to have to sit through that probably on 1 or 2 drives where it's like, wait, he was not open. How did he catch that?
Right.
But yeah, it comes down to whoever makes the first mistake. Neither team really does it too much. And unfortunately, like, Michigan's the least penalized team in the country. Washington's the most penalized team in the country.
Yeah, that's
So, and they're and I did look this up. It's an ACC crew that'll be reffing the game. So
fun.
um,
They're going to be able to work here pretty soon.
they're-
Becky, thank you so much for coming on, giving us a little
Welcome.
preview. Can we get some claps here, Moen? Did we clap her out? Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Becky.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right,
As
bye-bye.
always, go
Take care, Beck.
Huskies.
Go
Go
Huskies.
Dogs.
Okay, bye. Wow. All right, great. So any thoughts off of Becky's observations there, guys?
Yes, just one. Joe Burrow in his national championship season, I think, was a little bit better than Michael Penix. Just a little
He
bit.
played well. He did play well. He had, I think, more talent though than Washington has. I think
Well,
that LSU team
On offense?
On
I
offense,
think
yeah.
I think on offense definitely.
Higgins,
I don't
Chase,
Washington
Chase,
is
Jefferson.
extremely talented on offense. I don't think they have the same talent that LSU had on defense.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. I guess we'll find out. Michigan's coming up.
I think a lot of people are kind of wondering if maybe they got it wrong on the Heisman.
Oh, they did get it wrong.
Well,
on the
Bo
Heisman,
Nix
100%.
stole half of his votes.
People,
If Bo
he
Nix
did,
isn't
and
in the running,
people got stuck on
Penix wins.
stats. They didn't even see this kid play. I mean,
No.
if you watched him play enough times, and not one of the
Right.
games where he was sick in it, because there was like 2 games where he was sick. If you watched, there's just no other quarterback like him in college. I mean, he's a little bit older, but you can grab him first pick in the draft, plug him into your team if you have a similar system to what he's running now, and he's ready to go day one. I don't think that's the case with any other quarterback ever. I think most of the times they have to dumb down their systems for a quarterback coming in as a rookie, and that's not the case with him. His passes, there's NFL quarterbacks that would like to be that precise. So I think what Michigan has a tough time going up against this, but I think that they're just going to try and take their 2 backs and just control the game by keeping Penix off the field as much as possible so he doesn't get in a rhythm.
Becky follows that up by saying 2019 LSU would beat us for sure. So at least you have some humility in Husky fans, right? If you're out there, Pickles, you want to join, go ahead and join now. We've got a window for you. In the meantime, let's see. Do you have something you wanted to talk about? You've been gone, and I know that there's a bunch of topics you really want to touch on. I'm just going to give you a little bit of time.
Can we bring up the Florida State bowl game, or is that for later?
Well, it's for Jen is going to be here.
Yeah,
so,
we'll save that for Jen.
Yeah,
but
yeah, we'll talk Florida State later.
I mean, really, going back to like the bowl games, though. I mean, I love bowl games, like everybody else out there, everybody in the chat, all you guys. But like, bowl games aren't the same, guys. It's not the same product that we used to have. You know, the Alamo Bowl of old or something. It's
right.
It's so watered down. It's like it's worse than a spring game or a scrimmage. Like, the product has to improve so much for the bowl games to survive. And I've got major concerns again with the 12-team playoff and all those games being a product to consume versus a bowl game with possibly second or third string players. Like, it's just not even close to being on par. And I'd love to hear your guys' ideas on how to kind of save bowl games. I know, like, Immaculate, what do you think about that? How can you save bowl games?
Well, I think number one, you have to make it saved to the players. You have to make the players want to be part of this, not just to not opt out, but to give a damn why they're in the game.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is now we're taking the most relevant teams out of the bowl games.
Right.
When bowls were big, it was basically people played in different bowls, and then afterwards you had polls to decide
Right.
who. So there was a lot of, well, this team did this in this game against that team, and it was not clear. And that was actually kind of fun at the time. Now with everything that's going on to decide that, there's just not much meaning other than what's an obvious cash grab and, an exhibition game for people to go have fun at if they want to. Beyond that, it's not good viewing if you're just at home. I mean, how many other things you have to do?
It reminded me of preseason NFL football. That's what it reminded me of.
But if, one of the ideas, I don't want to go into it too much right now because we probably don't have enough time, but a lot of people seem to think tournaments. They want to have tournaments at the end of the season. And so I don't necessarily agree in one big one because you're cutting down the number of opportunities for schools. But I do like the idea of having multiple small, tiny 4-team tournaments and having bowls form up little alliances of 3 bowls to create those. So, and then you could have money that goes to players by winning or whatever. And I think that makes them care more and it makes those games have like an edge to it. We just have to craft them to meet the market of today.
Yeah.
We'll have to dive into that deeply, Immaculate, because there's many layers to it. And there's been several ideas that have been proposed to me in the last 3 weeks about either getting rid of bowl games or changing them to a different part of the season. I don't know. But I think we can talk about all that stuff in the coming days and weeks for sure. Sergeant Pickles, you made it. Good to see you, man.
Nice picture.
Howdy, everybody. How we doing?
Good.
Happy New Year's, Pickles.
Yeah, I'm not in quite as bad a shape as Becky is. I think I was pretty much speechless at the end, so it preserved my voice a little bit, but can't say that the level of anxiety dropped until maybe a good 2 hours after the game.
Well, that was a rough finish. I mean, geez, like you guys are known for having like just great coaches, and then it just seemed at the very end you had some brain farting going on with them. Okay, like they I don't know, like they had kind of given up on actually having a game plan.
I need some clarification. Is everyone confused as why they were running the ball on that last series?
You mean throwing it?
Oh, or throwing it the series before? Yeah. I wouldn't have been shocked if it was like short, easy completions, but I saw people even picking on why are they running the ball 3 times right before the Dylan Johnson injury. I'm like, that was the correct call. It's unfortunate that he got injured and stopped the clock, but it was correct to run the ball there.
Yeah, they're trying to run out a few extra seconds per play because they had a little bit too much time left. So they needed to burn a few extra seconds so they couldn't just kneel. But
yeah, it's just some people kind of revisionist history.
Bad. That was a bad decision. That was just kind of a brain fart. Like, oh, our quarterback's freaking amazing. We'll just let him do something they won't think is happening. Because who would think that you would throw in that situation? And it didn't work. And you got to take that one on the chin. But otherwise, I mean, great game that they coach for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad the entire nation got to experience the full 2023 Husky experience. That's our whole season in a nutshell right there. Doesn't matter if you're winning by 3 touchdowns or you're down 7 points. That's the roller coaster at the end. And it actually gives me a little bit of confidence to say that these guys, for as terrifying as they make it, they've come through every time. Every single time that, the defense has needed a play, for as criticized as they've been, they make that play.
Well, I know this, Pickles. You the whole time was thinking, we had these guys for 2.5 hours.
Oh my gosh. Pickles, I really was thinking that actually.
Yeah, I knew you were. I was in your head.
Oh yeah, it's too predictable. Hey Pickles, I've got a question for you though. Okay, so outside of Michael Penix, who was the most important player on the field yesterday that pulled out this win for Washington?
That's a good
most
question.
important. Well, I mean, I'll the easy answer is Braylon Trice because of his impact on the game. He has led the nation in pressures 2 seasons in a row, and people are saying Washington didn't have a pass rush. They don't have the sack numbers that would suggest it, but they absolutely have a pass rush, and you can see what happens when you don't take it seriously. I will actually say a guy like Troy Fautanu, but also the rest of the O-line, but specifically him, because if you go back and watch the film, he's our starting left tackle. He's going to be an NFL guy. He was flattening dudes. And Texas has athletes. We know that Sweat and Murphy are their big dudes in the middle, but it's not like their edge rushers are chopped liver, and he was absolutely pancaking bodies on the outside.
Very nice. So going forward here, looking at the matchup versus Michigan, who do you think, again, outside of Penix, we know he needs to have a massive game, right? But what other player is absolutely critical for a win versus Michigan, Pickles?
I'm going to say this is going to be a fun one for all you Big Ten fans. You need to learn how to speak Polynesian. Tuli Letuignasanoa. He's our
that's not
interior
happening.
defensive tackle. Yeah, he's our starting defensive tackle. He's been banged up, and in some of the games where the Huskies have been run on, he was hurt. And he's our one of our senior, really big leaders, and can just eat up space in the middle. He's not going to put up crazy stats. He's not going to put up crazy numbers, but he is so critical to just holding that inside. And it's not like this isn't me disrespecting McCarthy, but I think they're going to try and run Corum until you prove that you can't run him anymore.
Yeah.
Or they're forced not to because they're in a shootout. But if you give them the space at times like Alabama did, Alabama even tried to stop the run, and Corum still sliced them up at certain points. So if they run to the outside and they're flush to the outside, they might eat up some yards. I think we have enough speed on the outside to at least limit the damage in that kind of way. But if you get broken through on the middle, that's how they're going to smack you the whole game.
Yeah, your front seven needs to get some wins.
Yeah.
So
Texas is no slouch, and they have good running backs. And obviously the turnovers were crucial. They were moving the ball on us running it. I honestly don't know why Sark got away from running the ball. I think he totally goofed up that one. But yeah,
I think
Texas
he felt
had
like
some
he was in a
success running.
track beat, Pickles. It's hard
Yeah.
to stay. It's hard to stay with a run, realizing that you're going up against a guy who can score every time he touches the ball in 90 seconds.
That's exactly
really
what
hard
Washington
to do.
needs to do to Michigan is
Exactly
make
right.
Michigan feel
Make
like
them
they
mad.
need to pass to keep up
Yep.
because JJ can't do it.
Yeah, and I already argued with some Michigan fans about this. They're like, "Oh, we played Marvin Harrison Jr." Absolutely, and he's an outstanding receiver. Now play him plus two other light Marvin Harrison Juniors
Right.
With
dude
Penix
that's
throwing to them.
Yeah, with a guy, an NFL caliber guy, throwing to them. That's the difference.
After the game next week, we're going to have another show, and we're going to talk about how Seattle can trade up to get that kid. That's all I'm saying. All right. Here's a question to Moen, super chat. He says, "Hey, Moen, at least Wisconsin had a shot to win their bowl game. What's that about?"
It's true.
It's true because I thought LSU was going to boat race them.
Oh, okay. All right.
And they did. Wisconsin came through. They had a shot, and they blew it. So,
is Ryan Willie a Wisconsin guy?
Yeah, he's a Badger guy.
Yeah, he's a Badger.
Okay. Got a lot of flack about going into the Texas game from some Wisconsin fans. Very lighthearted kind of stuff. Nothing real serious about being the real UW. Wisconsin 0-4 all time against the real UW, who won the Sugar Bowl.
Oh, here we go.
Oh boy.
So you can take that to the bank.
Well, I was wrong, Ryan. Thank you for the super chat. I was wrong.
Oh, also, Mr. Willie, all due respect, close only counts on horseshoes and hand grenades.
All right, so preview next week for us then.
Oh goodness, my brain's just been in a freaking blender of Husky purple running through the streets and people going nuts. Of course, I've been stuck at home not enjoying most of it, but that's the way it goes. Preview next week. The short turnaround is pretty tricky. I think you give DeBoer time, he can scheme against anyone. But I've definitely, it's been said multiple times that, the short turnaround favors the better raw athletes on one side or the other. I think in general, that's true. I still think Ryan Grubb can cook up some stuff. Now, whether he overcooks it like he did at times during Texas, we'll see. I don't love all the crazy trick plays. They're awesome when they work. They look terrifying when they don't. It's really, Michigan wants to play a, old school football game. They want to grind you, wear you, and force you into that mode. And it's like Moen's saying, you're striking fast. You're challenging them outside. You only have to connect 2 or 3 of those deep shots and get them in a track meet. And McCarthy's going to have no choice. He will have to sling the ball. And Jabbar Muhammad is a legit defender. I know the Husky defense statistically has not been super strong, but they made plays down the stretch against Texas, and Texas has very, very good receivers, very athletic.
And you beat Oregon twice.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Troy Franklin is no joke. He's very, very good.
Yeah, it can work. You guys have any other comments or questions you want to talk to Pickles about?
I think that we need to consider, if Washington wins the national championship, we need to have some type of brief celebration here on the show, Bomber. Moan and Immaculate.
Definitely.
We need to sing the fight song. We need to do something for Washington. And on the flip
I'm happy
side,
to do that.
On the flip side, if the University of Michigan wins, I think we need to
I
play
won't do
taps.
anything.
I think we need to play taps.
All
I don't know if you want me
Moen-
singing, but
Moen needs to find that drop then.
We got to figure out. Yeah, maybe somebody
don't
has an
have
idea on
taps.
how we can celebrate. Or I mean, it's going to be ugly if we all sing together.
Yeah.
I mean, either
don't
way,
have
a Big Ten team is winning, so we're good.
Oh
Yeah, I
yeah,
have a
Moen, Moen was gonna say something. He was set in Twitter overnight.
B-I-G,
B-I-G, overword. Yeah.
B-I-G.
Okay.
The new chant. Oh,
Okay. All right, Immaculate, what were you gonna say?
no, that's good. You're good.
Ryan Willie, just to reply, says we'll see who's the real UW in a couple of years. So
They did look
there
good.
we go.
They did
4 straight
look good.
wins, and we'll be at a tie. Then we can decide from there.
Right. All right. Well, Pickles, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's going to be a round robin tonight, so we got to get people on and off. But thank you so much for joining. And,
I just got one last tidbit for you guys that's fun
Sure.
for me personally.
Mhm.
So my high school band director, I live here about 30 minutes south of Seattle. He went to Michigan in the 70s, was a sousaphone player. He wrote Let's Go Blue.
No.
So
way.
he is very
Really?
close and personal to me. I know that he'll be cheering hard for the Wolverines, but both of his sons went to UW. So that'll be a very interesting game for him and his family to watch.
That's an
Let's
interesting
go
story.
Blue. I don't think I know
There should
that
be
song.
some media folks touching in upon that. People would find that to be interesting.
Yeah, his name's Joe Carl. He's an awesome guy.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was an undergrad at Michigan and then settled down out here in Washington State. But yeah, I'm sure it'll be a fun day in his household with his 2 sons cheering for the Huskies.
He needs to have one of those split jerseys when one side is the Michigan, the other side Washington, because
Oh, he'd never be caught dead. He wouldn't even allow you to utter the name Ohio State in his presence.
Ohio State.
Kenneth giving me grief about being a Husky fan. I grew up in Washington, and I can honest to goodness say that I've been torn between those schools since I was a little kid. So
Yeah,
I'm not going to explain my fandom to anybody.
I feel
you have
like
a problem with
BYU fans get a pass anyways, because you can have your childhood team, and then if you're part of the faith, it's like a requirement that you cheer for BYU anyways.
That's
Thank
how it
you,
works.
Pickles. I appreciate that.
It's just the truth.
Well, next time I get harangued on Twitter, I'll copy you in, and you can tell them that's the reason.
No worries.
Because Kenneth isn't the first one. Michael Gygax did the same thing, and whatever. But this is the way I do things. Anyway, thank you so much.
Bomber's
Pickles.
putting
It's so
together
good
an
to see
army
you.
of sergeants.
Yeah, you better watch
You got
out.
yourself 2 sergeants now.
That's true. We do. Anything else you want to say before you're out of here?
Screw your blue chip ratio. Go Dogs. See
I like it.
All right. Well,
Go
there we
Dogs.
go.
you guys.
Thank you so much. We have the best contributors on this show, the best fans, the best creators, and I couldn't be more thankful for both Becky and for Sergeant Pickles to come on tonight. Let's see. I'm going to go back to you because I know you got the most to say tonight. What's the next topic you want to get to? The only thing we can't touch on is Florida State.
Yeah, you know what? Pickles mentioned something actually. So to give everybody a little bit of a Utah dynamic, this is going to do something. So there's a lot of obviously bad blood between Utah and BYU for a lot of reasons and stuff. But part of that actually is, because of the LDS faith driven part of it too. And what's odd about there's a lot of Ute fans, but 50-60% of Ute fans are LDS too, right, Bomber?
Yeah, that's true.
But a lot of folks that went to the University of Utah when they were younger, they would know people that were at the University of Utah when the Utes weren't as good at football, and they'd actually cheer for BYU and wear BYU gear and support the Cougars despite going to the University of Utah and having no affiliation with
That is
BYU other
odd.
than
I don't
that
think I've
happened.
ever
That
met
happened all the
somebody.
time when I was
Really?
growing up and stuff. It's
Okay.
probably changed since the Utes have had 20 good years of
Okay.
football and everything. But that
Okay.
was a dynamic that's added some venom to that rivalry in particular. And Sargent and Pickles mentioned that, but I hadn't heard that for a long time, and that brings back a lot of memories of growing up in Utah and understanding that too. So there's just another piece of bad blood and stuff, and why Ute fans might feel a little bit slighted and stuff, because a lot of ex-Utah grads actually supported BYU back in the day and probably still do. So
That's an
food for
interesting
thought
point.
there.
I've never been on that side of the perspective, so I appreciate you explaining that, because I think you and I have been telling them from the beginning that the relationship is so much deeper than any real rivalry. That we're
Right.
talking about something that's even, when you start talking about people's faith, you start talking about who they support. It really strikes to core things. And I mean, I know this. Immaculate and Moen have come out and actually said they're learning more about the relationship and the rivalry since they joined our show. I want to put words in your mouth, guys, but you guys have both spoken highly about both BYU and Utah.
Yeah, well, I will say Ohio State football is a religion in the state of Ohio.
Okay,
It's
No doubt
legally
about it.
recognized. So
that's fair.
But yeah, I mean, I think very highly of Utah football and Utah as a university. So, and BYU as well. So, but it's a learning trying to figure out where your rivalry is, because from a Midwest perspective, it's a rivalry we never hear about. I mean, we hear
Right.
about the Iron Bowl.
That's shocking. Wow.
Yeah, we just
It's a big problem for the West. Yeah, we just never hear that much about those. I mean, you have your few, but I mean, even like a Washington, Oregon thing that really isn't.
That didn't used to be a rivalry.
No,
that didn't used to be a rivalry.
And the state rivalries exist, but
right,
no one really pays attention to the other rivalries in other states unless it's a big one. And I guess I never really thought of BYU and Utah, because when I thought of BYU, I thought independent, and Utah, I know for a lot of people, Utah's been around for their entire life, but for me, that's not necessarily the case. And
Right.
you're kind of a newer phenomenon. And I think of Utah as the up and comer out of the Mountain West who just made everyone's life such hell that they're just like, oh, just bring them up here. So so for us, yeah, like to hear how big of a deal that is in the state of Utah, I don't think that's a story that really came out of that state all that much. That was kind of your state story, just like here in Iowa or up there in Iowa. Here in Arizona, it'd be Arizona State, Arizona.
Right.
In Iowa would be Iowa State. You guys have Utah, BYU. It's just not as obvious because it's not a Utah and Utah State or whatever.
Right.
But you learn just how big of a deal it is. I would say it maybe is bigger than most in-state rivalries because of all these other little aspects to it that are more from like real life rather than just kind of this tribal, my school versus your school thing. It's a little bit more than that.
I can't wait till we get to it this next year. It is going to be fantastic.
You just wonder what the Big 12 can do, right, for the rivalry
it's
too.
With rivalries, absolutely. Yeah,
because it's such a big deal locally and everything. Everyone talks about that. That's all the chatter. But when you're looking elsewhere in the Midwest, it's just not. I think we're finding out. So hopefully, Yormark can really enhance that and build that rivalry game and the brands. So
it's going to be rivalry week, so that'll be you're going to be competing against some big ones. But
we'll have to see. I hope it's on Thanksgiving myself. I would love that.
Yeah, you guys might take that.
So really quick, we're going to get into the bowl games now. We're going to, again, everything is open except for Florida State. The only thing is I can't find the slide. I must have closed it that showed the winning and losing for each conference in the bowl games. Can one of you guys find that graph for me, and I'll display it while we're having this conversation? Just off the top of your head, again, everybody else is open except for Florida State. The idea that these bowl games represent a reward for the players and additional money for the schools and conferences, is that enough by itself to keep them relevant? Because the idea that you're playing third and fourth string people that never saw the field once, but it's because you don't have anybody else. You could put band members out there. They wouldn't even know. I mean, how does that I remember the romance. I think you guys are all old enough to remember the romance that bowl season used to be. It was a pageant. It was a pageant for 4 weeks, and it started like December 15th, something like that. Ran all the way through the second week in January, and it was something that everybody looked forward to. I'll be honest with you. I've only watched 2 other bowl games besides the tournament games yesterday. I watched Florida State to see if they were going to show up. And I can't even remember what the fourth one was. But I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think about conundrum? He said it right here. Bowl games equals money. I would also say bowl games equal additional practices that they give to these schools.
I would say it's inversely proportionate with how many 4-star and 5-star players your team has in terms of how much your fan base likes your bowls. Because the more of those guys you have on your team, the more of them are likely to opt out. I mean, now, of course, there's guys that work up from the 3 stars and whatever that still make it the NFL and could opt out. But most of these schools can make it with 1 or 2 guys, 3 guys, whatever, that opt out. It's when you have, kind of this across the board, and then, with injuries. I think there's a lot of reasons for it to not be good, but there's a lot of fan bases and schools that still love them. So there's still a place for them. And as the playoff expands and takes up more of those teams that, actually are problematic for the bowl system now, they may naturally get better.
So what do you guys think about this idea from Payson Cougar fan and FCS type NIT, which I know you were talking about a little bit ago, Immaculate, with 24 teams combined combined with the 12 CFP games, which there's not 12 games, is there? It's 1, 2, 3. How many games are if it's a 12-team playoff? Is it 9? 14? What is it?
I heard someone say 16, but I haven't been able to check that. Seems
Is
off.
that right? So we have quarterfinals.
No.
It's at least 11. I think 16.
I think it's 9. I think it's 9 total.
I thought it was 9. Okay, so anyways, he says outside
I think it's actually 11. But
okay, well, let's go with 11. I don't really care. This is saying with 11 CFP games that you could make the Peach Bowl and the Avocado Bowl and the Holiday Bowl. That would be their own tournament in essence. And then everybody else, 36 teams could be in another 34 postseason games. So that doesn't get us to quite where we made it this time. There's 44 bowl games. It's insane. Go ahead, Moen.
Right, but you got to remember the first bowl games are not bowl games; they're home games.
Right. Well, that's
the
true.
higher seed.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
You've only got the second round, which is the 4 games there. Then you've got 2 more after that.
2 and 1, right?
Right. So
yeah, okay.
Those are the only amount of bowl games you can get out of there. But I had proposed this on our last episode of Moen After Dark, was doing an NIT tournament with number 13 through 24, and offering a play-in game for that 24-25 spot, and making bowls out of those. But the problem is, we can come up with all these solutions. It's not going to change the problem of kids sitting out, kids getting injured, kids transferring. All that stuff's still going to be an issue regardless. If they don't have something to play for, kids aren't going to play. If you make the reward monetary in like an NIT tournament, say, hey, the champion gets not only the championship, but they get $5 million to spread across the entire team, kids might want to play. You got to have some kind of profit sharing there.
I think they need to do something that's a little more fancy for the younger kids. I think instead of just giving them money, have a big old pedestal with just a fancy ass freaking car, and the MVP of the game is going to get that. And then the winning team's all going to get watches from this thing. Just have like a big presentation of this stuff, and it'll be all over social media. And I know, and I wouldn't be a big fan of that, but I think that would work with those kids because they want moments, they want to shine, they want to show off something. Like money is good and it would probably work, but I think the marketing side of something would have to be weighed in. And with like that's 24. You're talking about 24 teams or whatever, to 36. right now with bowls, you get a 2-to-1 ratio. The bigger you make a tournament like that, you're cutting that ratio down of the amount of participation, and getting these schools to vote for that type of system. Probably good luck. I mean, every single, a bunch of schools are going to look at that as possibility of not being in, so they're going to no vote. My thoughts. The thing I'm thinking of is like a hybrid. That too, because that's a lot of games.
Doesn't go away. Yeah,
it's a lot of games for whoever's actually doing good. It's almost like a penalty to doing well.
It really is.
So yeah, I think that's something like where you have like 3 bowls come together, form an alliance, and then you work out your deals. Like maybe you have a deal where you 3 Southern bowls, and you got to deal with the Sun Belt and the AAC and CUSA, and then one other, and so you have 4 teams come in, and then you have your awards at the end for these players to actually want to stay. And it's not overwhelming. It's not too much. It's 2 weeks worth, and you could have some earlier, some later. You could have 3 bowls that are over a large area. You could have a Big 12 team, an ACC, a Big 10, and an SEC. And so they're all playing for that, and the winners get the rewards. Something like that. I mean, you're going to have to give these kids a reason to stick around. But also, if you make them a little more regional, a little more local, you give people more of a reason to go. I mean, buying tickets for these games is still a big deal. But we're forcing teams that have small fan bases to go all over the place to do this.
But see, I think if you add the prominence to the bowl game, they will be more likely to stick around and play. If there's a way that there'll be something built in, a reward outside of just maybe they give them a stipend. Each player gets $3,000 for showing up. I don't think that's enough to get your best players to stay on your team.
I don't either, Bomber. And I've got a different solution, and it's kind of an extreme one. Folks might not like this, but I think this is a solution too that needs to be considered. I really think that there's going to be a breakaway between the autonomous 3 and 4 conferences.
Yeah,
sometime in the near future. I think that with the autonomous 3 or 4 conferences, you've got a collection of 50 to 60 programs. It's going to be its own essentially new Division I. You have a 16-team playoff. No bowl games, 16 teams out of the 50, 60 make it. And on the other hand, all the rest of the current D1 teams that aren't in that swath have their own playoff and a 16-team playoff as well. So you're basically creating an NIT version of a playoff, of a championship and stuff for the programs that aren't in the autonomous 4. So you really get 30 games, 30 teams.
You're actually describing Premier League in England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
You have
exactly
upper division and lower divisions, and they all have their own tournament.
I think that's the solution because people, these players have something to play for. You could still win a championship. You're in a tournament atmosphere. It's not just a scrimmage anymore. I think that the days of our romantic bowl games that we all loved are over because of this playoff that has been built and because of the expansion of it. So those days are gone, and they're not going to come back no matter what, no matter if it's a financial incentive or a regional incentive in my view. So I think that you split it. You have the A3, A4, its own essentially league and playoff of 16 teams, and the same thing also for the others.
Ryan Willie, another super chat. Thank you so much, Ryan. Says, I'm old enough to remember when the bowl season ended on New Year's Day. I remember that too. I'm not sure if anybody else does, but I can remember that as well. There are too many games. Is there such thing? If there's sponsors out there that are willing to pay a school $1 million, why should it matter? If they want to go, they get the money. I don't see why they should be penalized by taking away bowl games arbitrarily. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
It just comes down to, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It just comes down to, okay, how you're going to get your team to actually stick around. Some of these cases, it's almost an entirely different team playing than what team played to earn that position in that bowl game. So
that's for sure.
It's I would say it's a form of false advertising, of false marketing of, this team's going to play in this game. Like, no, it's not. It's a different team. But I think if you can find a way to figure out what these kids are actually would make them stick around and what make them actually want to play hard for at this point in the year. Because before that, they're playing for, postseason, whatever you're playing for. But at this point in time, it's kind of been ingrained in their heads that these games don't matter. When I think they matter just as much as the regular season to most of these kids. But yeah.
I was just going to say, I can't find that link you send me. Could you just embed it into the messaging?
Yeah, sure thing.
And then, there was a second question I had. Oh, I was going to ask Moen and both of Moen and Immaculate. You guys have teams that they played in lesser than bowls. I mean, what would have to happen for, say, a Marvin Harrison Jr. to stick around and play on the Outback Bowl?
It wouldn't have happened. Well, they played in the Cotton Bowl, but it wouldn't have happened.
I just said any bowl.
Right. It wouldn't happen because look, he's going to be a top 3 draft pick.
Right.
He's not going to risk a $25 million a year payday to, play in a bowl that he's not going to win a championship on. And I don't fault him. You had a lot of guys come back from Ohio State. I mean, Travion Henderson played, Ibuka played. It's just we were down to our third string quarterback, who was a true freshman and never seen any significant time on the field. Our defense showed up. Our offense, especially the offensive line, just didn't. And I mean, it's a great point. Like Immaculate said, the team that earned it, that was not the number 7 Ohio State out there. That was not Kyle McCord at quarterback. No. Marvin Harrison wasn't out there. The O-line, we had lost one of the O-linemen was held out. We had some injuries, so it is what it is. Like I said, I'm not really even mad or upset that they lost. I'm disappointed. But the fact that our defense showed up and held Missouri, which was a fantastic offense.
Yeah, Missouri had they were on a roll. They've been playing well.
3 quarters they held them. So I mean, and unfortunately Jack Sawyer went out there and performed fantastically. I don't know where that performance has been all season, but I'm sure he'll leave now to go in the draft. So
Immaculate, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum on this one. I hear this and it makes sense. I get it. The risk is there to get injured. Yeah, that same risk is there every single game of the year. It's just the mentality has been kind of allowed to this point where we treat it like it's a different thing. And so if we're going to get to a point where these kids, they're voting positively that they want to be employees, I hope they realize that once you become an employee, you're not getting out of this game. Your ass will be there. And so they should be careful what they're asking for if that's what they want, because this opting out shit will be over. And I'm all about them having their rights to do that and do whatever, but just be honest about it. You just,
but
they're allowed to get out of it. So
aren't you just begging to get lied to by the medical team? Aren't you just begging for players they'll fake injuries? If they need an out because you're kind of forcing them to play, aren't you just begging to be lied to?
I would say that's probably in your employment contract that your own medical people have a say in looking at that and seeing if that's a real injury or not. I mean, faking an injury like that takes, X-rays, MRI. I mean, there's a lot of ways to go. Yeah, this isn't real.
Okay.
So yeah, no, they come at that with. Remember, most of these schools, especially like in the Big Ten, they've got very good medical universities there, medical facilities, hospitals. I mean, you're not going to pull something like that. And if you're on a contract, so that's going to change a lot. And my whole point of that is to say, people wonder how this is going to get fixed. When you see them asking these guys, hey, do you want to be an employee? They're not saying it's going to mean this and this and this and this. It's just you're going to get paid. It's not the
employee thing we're still not sure about, right? That hasn't happened yet. So
it has not happened yet.
Institutional changes before anything like that could be implemented.
Massive changes, but that's probably coming this year.
Okay. Before we get to the bowl weeks and the viewership numbers, by the way, thanks for getting that to me.
Sure.
I want to thank everybody for being here. Again, it's a happy new year to you all. We're over 100 people watching live, another 20 watching on Twitter. Thank you so much for doing that. Make sure you follow us all on Twitter and turn on your notifications so that you'll know when our tweets are going out. And then, of course, subscribe to our show on YouTube. And I'm going to give you a quick primer on how you can sign up to be a member of Big 12 Mafia.
Become a member of Big 12 Mafia by going to our homepage and hitting the join button located next to the subscribe button in the upper right corner. There are several membership levels to choose from.
Thanks again to Moen for putting that together for us. Again, if you guys have questions about how to become a member, just shoot us a DM and we can walk you through it as well. All right. You're the one who wanted me to bring these up, so go ahead.
Why do bowl games exist still? It's because of what you're saying here. It's because ESPN, ABC, it's advantageous. Look at this. So this is week 2. The week 3 ratings have not come out yet. This is the sportsmediawatch.com. This is also called the Paulson ratings. If you ever hear the term Paulson, that's what this is. But this is viewership per game. You can see Northwestern Utah pulled over 3 million viewers. But even going down to like the Idaho Potato Bowl, you got Georgia State and Utah State that pulled over 1 million viewers on ESPN for a bowl game. And just in comparison, for a college basketball game, those ratings are typically less than 1 million views for a high-end college basketball game at the same time. So the viewership, even for the lowest end bowl games, are better than the best college basketball games in a lot of cases. So that's the reason why bowl games exist. The question, though, that we need to pose is, if the quality continues to decline, will these viewership numbers still stand? And that's the big debate, probably what's going on in the TV industry right now too. Like, I mean, if it's a 63-3 game and we keep seeing that kind of garbage and everything, are people going to still tune in? Is it worth even watching anymore? But as of today, it is, and that's why bowl games exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Immaculate.
I was going to say, yeah, previous to all this happening, you were saying how watch the Orange Bowl. That one could change the paradigm because it was predictably so going to be such a bad game and be, so prominent that those start to become what defines what people think about the system as a whole. And we had more than just the Orange Bowl that went that way. So, yeah, I think that some of these numbers are going to start taking a dive.
I'm going to post the link again to this webpage. We encourage you guys to click on the link and join in the discussion in the comment section. These are really not shocking numbers, but it is interesting to see Georgia State and Utah State still got over 1 million. Moen, what do you think about that?
Yeah, Moen might have stepped
Sorry.
away for a
So
second.
no, I'm doing something. I'm doing something on the back end, guys. So just skip over
okay,
me for a
problem.
second.
Well, while we're waiting for him, I'm going to do this right now. And I was shocked to see this number. Northern Illinois and Arkansas State, 1.5 million. Those are shocking numbers.
Yeah, scroll down, Bomber, and go to week 1. I mean, you can get to
Yep.
more low-end bowl games and kind of get an idea right there. Scroll up a little bit more. Yeah, scroll up a little bit more and go to week 1 bowl games.
I thought I just went. That's it.
Look down a little bit more. Right there. There we go.
Yeah.
So you can see UCLA, Boise State, pulled over 2 million views. I mean, so these bowl games are getting at like 1 million to 3 million views. Like I think the Pop-Tart Bowl, like I'd heard, got over well over 3 million views, ran 4. The Orange Bowl got like 10 million. And like the Ohio State Bowl game, the Cotton Bowl got over 10 million. So some of these bowl games are pulling massive ratings. It's nuts. So yeah, that's why they exist today.
Let's see here. Look through some of these others, see if anything else jumps out. Since we didn't review these last week, 790,000 people tuned in to watch Montana and North Dakota State. I mean, where's SMU on here? There's SMU.
Have they played in the bowl game? Yeah. Yeah,
I thought they
maybe it was week 3.
Didn't they?
The bowl game.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit later.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Be another
They
one.
played Boston College and lost.
I know.
Is there another week?
It.
Is there another week?
Yeah, the week 3 numbers haven't come out yet. Probably over the next
So it
day
must
or
have
two.
just happened. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll keep watching them. I think those are some really cool points. At the end of the day, it's all about money.
Yeah.
We all know that. I'm more thinking about the players, the sitting out because they don't want to get hurt for the NFL, and the early transfer window. In my opinion, the people just pulling away and not wanting to play, there's nothing you can do about that, in my opinion. But this idea that we have things built into the system that already make it difficult, I just don't know how those dates stay the same.
It's tough, like right there, like with the transfer portal going right into bowl season. Like that makes no sense at all. Like it's like we're creating this terrible product, of this bowl based on the transfer portal. I mean, there were like what 1,600 kids in the transfer portal last time I checked.
Yes. Oh,
What
sorry.
about that too is like only 35 to 40% of those kids actually are committed. So you're gonna
Hey,
look.
Austin. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna go on mute for a second. Sorry about that.
So like I mean, the transfer portal has its own problems and everything, but that's killing the quality of bowl games. I mean, what do you think about that, Immaculate?
What's your question again on that one?
Yeah, so the transfer portal, the timeline for the transfer portal in early December, and how that interconnects with these bowl games, the quality of a bowl game, because of the player movement.
Well, and that's not really something we can get around because these are universities first. Transfer windows are based around enrollment times, so that's immovable. In terms of finding the right times for these, I think you're just going to have to come down to proper inducement to make these kids care. That's going to be a problem. It's almost one of those constant that you have to factor in if you're looking at this kind of like an equation, trying to figure out how to make it all make sense. It's universities, it's enrollment, all that. It's going to continue to be a pain in the butt. So they just have to figure out how the mentality is now and create an answer to it.
Is there any opportunity to move the transfer portal to after bowl season? I mean,
Not
that's
really.
that's the thing that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like the transfer portals before bowl season. It's before the early signing period, which is in mid-December, but then
Right.
National Signing Day is in early February. So why not move the transfer portal to mid-January and bump out National Signing Day for a couple weeks?
Well, there's multiple. I think there's like later on ones for folks who maybe didn't make it through or whatever, or things happen. But I think the main ones are based around enrollment times.
Yeah, it's enrollment.
It's but there are these other ones, and I have no idea exactly why they exist. It's not really my forte at all. But I think the main ones that formed up and the wide open ones, those are based around enrollment times at universities.
And I'll ask this since Jen's on her way, by the way. Jen Knowles going to be here with us in just a minute, but I'll ask this as an open-ended question. I heard an idea that originally I scoffed at 6 weeks ago that now I'm thinking about it, maybe it makes sense. Why not just move all the bowl games into week 0?
So the week 0 idea is a fun one, but then like you're looking at completely different rosters, which seems crazy, but like I guess we're looking at different rosters anyway.
Yeah, I think you answered your own question.
Yeah, it's like almost like create an invitational for the beginning of the season, right? Like you earned an invitational berth for the beginning of the season. Like maybe you can make a small tournament before like your conference play starts. So those are your out of conference games. I mean, that's actually a pretty innovative idea, Bomber. If you did something like that people might be, willing to watch.
I like it personally. I think it's a good idea.
My thoughts are that they actually already have something planned out for week 0 and week 1. But if they don't, I don't see anything wrong with that idea at all.
I haven't heard that. What have you heard?
Well, I don't think that right now there's very little usage. But I don't think that when they first created them that their intention was just to create something that has little usage. I think that it's for the future when we have conference playoffs and you need to start making room for extra games because of their problems with the NFL, they're going to shift much of their schedules forward into week 1 and week 0, which basically gives you 2 more weeks, which will then become part of the conference playoffs later on. So that way they don't cut into NFL time. But I could be wrong on that. And if I am, then I think that idea has a lot of merit.
There is the one downside of that, and that is you're playing in a previous season to be rewarded in a preseason.
Yeah.
So those players, unless you make it the playoff. Now, this is one I would say, go ahead and go to this week 0 idea, but then go to 16 teams in the playoff. Get as many teams into the playoff at the end of the season because they don't have to work around bowl games and stuff.
Absolutely. I think 16 teams are needed. I don't think you can go more than 16 just based on the amount of games you'd have to get to the championship. It's just too much of a liability. But 16 seems like a natural fit and everything for playoff season. So it needs to go to 16, and eventually, we'll see what happens with the bowl games. But yeah, something needs to dramatically change because those viewership numbers that we just saw that are pretty good, they're going to decline. I'm not going to – I love college football. I'm not going to watch some of these crappy bowl games when it's a 25, 30-point, 40-point game. That Liberty-Oregon game was – I've got to ask you guys this too, okay? The Liberty-Oregon game, with that in mind, do you think that in the new playoff format, I realize the highest ranked non-A4 conference championship gets an automatic berth?
Right.
Does that Liberty result versus Oregon, does that change your mind on the structure of that automatic berth? And I'm thinking maybe there should be some type of top 15 ranking that a non-A4 team gets to get into the playoff. They have to be in the top 15 to qualify for that. They can't just be on 24, 25th best team in the nation and get into the playoff if they're the top non-A4
There should be
team.
a minimum. Yeah.
Do you guys agree with that? I'm curious with the chat too. Do you guys agree with that? Because I don't want to see a Liberty Oregon game anymore. I don't want to see that as a playoff game.
I don't think so because I think Oregon is in the top 6 teams of the country. But we're talking about a tournament that's going to have the top 12, or what you're saying, the top 16. If you go down and you look in the top 15 and you say, would Liberty match up better against some of those? I think so. I think Oregon is one of the I think Oregon's one of the most talented teams in all of football. They just, they lost twice to Washington. And it was close both times. And then you're throwing Liberty against them, who has a stud at quarterback and a few other guys because Hugh Freeze was there and got these guys in. But I think that without those couple of guys, there might have been some other teams that would have beat them. But if you look at a New Mexico State, they slaughtered Auburn. Auburn almost beat Alabama. So do I think that this means that no other school could come in and be competitive? No. Do I think that's going to be presented that way by certain people in the CFP board meetings that are to come? Absolutely. And that's unfortunate for the G5s. But do I think that should define it? No.
If the G5 teams are good enough, they're going to be in that top 16, though.
Really? I don't know.
Yeah, you think
are they going to get that kind of a ranking? Are they going to be?
Well, none of them were undefeated. So this year you can't say
Liberty was.
Through the
end. Were they ranked?
Yeah, Liberty was
undefeated
going into that game.
I thought they had lost a game. I apologize.
Nope, they only lost to Oregon.
Okay, all right, I'll take that back then.
They even they smoked New Mexico State. I mean, they poured it on them.
How about the top 30 or something? They could widen it out. It just seems like there needs to be some minimal standard.
Well, absolutely. There's got to be something for the quality of the game. You don't want to see blowouts with G5 level teams like this Liberty team.
We had blowouts in the top 4. This was people say this is the best one ever because both of them were competitive. Because a lot of them in the past were not. You mean they just weren't? So I think we're kind of setting up a false line here that they have to be competitive games. And we don't have competitive games out of the top 4.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I didn't say competitive games. I'm saying there should be a minimal rank to get in.
And it's still, there's some politics involved with that. That's why for me, the thing I push, which, is no merit to it yet, nothing to point to it. I am all out of the whole rankings business. I want conference playoffs with tournament champions coming out of it and going into a tournament. And if you have a bad game, so well, but they've proven to be there. I mean, you have bad games in NFL playoff games too. And those are some of the most parity that you'll have in any league just by the way it's made up. So I don't think that this should be kept out, but I do think that a lot of people are going to use this against the entire G5 because of it.
Yeah,
So
and I don't think they should be left out either, but I just want like a quality qualifier, right? Like I don't want to see some 25th ranked G5 team that has no business being in the playoff, competing in the playoff. I want to see meet a certain bar to get in the playoff because you're not playing the strength of schedule that the A4 teams are, right? And again, for the viewership experience too, like as a consumer, I don't want to watch a blowout. And you're creating those blowouts, I think, more. And people will go back and say, well, what about Tulane beating USC? Well, most of the times, these USCs and everybody, they're opting everybody out. They're not even coming to play, like seriously. Like you're playing the second and third stringers, right?
So I agree with that part of the competitive balance piece. I'm not saying Liberty shouldn't be in, by the way. I'm not arguing against or for anybody. All I'm trying to say is the TV people, as Bob's told us many times, they're about just the numbers, the revenue,
right?
Sure.
and getting eyeballs on it. So if they could prove, and this is where the viability standard, that's what I would call it, would be, you need to be good enough to be able to hold up that minimum amount. But who would be the person to make that minimum amount? I have no idea. It's really arbitrary. And right now is probably the best solution to get those teams in by guaranteeing them one spot. But the conundrum I have with the Oregon game is Oregon sat a bunch of people too. But Bo Nix played, of all things, because he knows he might not be playing pro football next year. So that's where I'm confused by this bowl season.
What I heard was Bo Nix just didn't want to go out on a loss. I don't know if there's there is to that. He didn't want to go out on a loss since he didn't want his last time with that team for what they did for him. Because remember, this is a special situation. He went to Auburn, that was his thing, and didn't get treated well there. And he came over there, and Oregon kind of turned him into what he is. So he kind of wanted to pay him back. And these situations happen. The same thing happened at Iowa, guys. No one opted out. But it's just, it's tough. I mean, it's always subjective. You're always going to have problems with that. And it comes down to who thinks who should be in a game and who shouldn't. And if a bad game happens, that's going to be used as ammo in this argument. But we're going to forget when the bad games happen between teams who are ranked in the top 4. I have a hard time with it. I think that we just need to get out of the rankings business in that regard. Keep it for a little bit because you got to have people engaged with that. But overall, I would rather see a team that, I'm just going to say it, deserved to be there, lose badly. Because, it happens. But, yeah.
Michigan versus the world has a statement here that I want Moen to address. Plenty of solutions, but there are no leaders in college football right now to make meaningful decisions.
Well, that's not true. There's plenty of leaders to make meaningful decisions. Just because you don't agree with them doesn't mean they're not meaningful decisions.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that? Because I have one more comment. Jen's on her way, by the way.
I think
finished another show.
I think the incapable people stand out more than the capable people. The capable people don't stand out to you. You don't hear nothing about them. There's a lot of capable people there, and I think there are probably some very good plans in the works. It's just those people are smart enough to not, get their boot stuck in their mouth to a media person or, that you just don't hear about them because they're not flubbing up. So I think that there are capable people up there. And I think there's getting more capable. We're seeing that with commissioners.
Scott White from Florida says, so with 2 playoff systems idea, teams like Vanderbilt most likely will never be in a playoff or a bowl if the bowls were to go away or changed at least. And because it's SEC, won't qualify for other playoff, but UNLV would. It's a two-edged sword, Scott. You're right. That is a difference, but they also have better advantages, right? Vanderbilt has all the advantages over a UNLV. So they're not. You can't really equate the two.
Oh, so Scott, Vanderbilt's going to be making about $80 million in football distributions, and UNLV's about 6 or 7. So I wonder what Vanderbilt would choose if you could choose one or the other. And of course, Vanderbilt could always go down to the Mountain West or somewhere else if they wanted to go down a tier to be more competitive. So it's
you mean the ACC?
That worked out with the Pac-12. The Pac-12 was doing everything about. We want that playoff spot, that guaranteed. How long did we hear that? You wanted to stay in the Pac-12 because we wanted that guaranteed playoff spot. It was all nonsense, by the way. Jen Knoll, how are
There
you
she
doing?
is. Oh,
Good to
hey.
see ya.
Hi.
Sorry, I didn't realize you were there when I made my ACC comments. Sorry.
I
Yeah.
don't mind. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Happy holidays and
Hi.
happy New Year to you.
Same to you guys. How are you?
Some
Good.
are
Answer.
still
Yeah,
tired.
doing great. Good to meet you, Jen.
Good to meet you. Absolutely.
She's a fan
Is
of
my-
the show, just so you know, you.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the show. I love this show so much. Is my
And
sound
we
okay,
love you.
guys?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
sound
you're
great.
fine.
Yeah, you're
Okay. Okay. I was having
All
some
right.
problems earlier, so I just wanted to make sure.
So FSU has been no start. The whole show, we haven't talked about it at all. So now that you're here for Florida State, tell us what you were thinking this last weekend after you watched them play.
It went about as I expected it to go. You know, to be honest, I know a lot of people wanted to hate on this, but I don't blame any of those kids for not playing, and I'm not going to criticize one of their decisions. It's hard because, and everybody's like, well, Georgia had players back, Georgia had players play, they had them come back, but Georgia's last game was a loss.
Yeah.
Florida State's wasn't. It's a dicey situation to really get into, but yeah, it went about how I wanted it to, or how I thought it was going to go, not how I wanted it to go, obviously, but
Of
like how I
course,
thought it was
yeah.
going to go. But what I did see was the Memphis guy Brock Glenn. He had some throws on him. Like, I was kind of happy, and then we got a quarterback yesterday, and Miami's still searching for one.
I think
A
that's
Miami
spot
Jet.
on.
Nice little
Really
shade
quick.
there at the end.
I'm going to cut you off for just a second. Moen's going to do a PSA for the channel and maybe some gifts. What do you got going over there, Moen?
I'll gift them right now. We're going to gift out some memberships. We get promotional memberships every month from YouTube. So I'm going to gift out 5 of those right now. If anybody else has a question about gifting, just click on the cash button in the lower right-hand corner, and you can give memberships to the channel. If you receive a membership, make sure to thank the person you received that membership from. And I have no control over who gets them, so there we go.
Click fast.
Click fast.
All right, we've got 5 memberships. I just want to bring that up. So click the gift icon and and thank the person if you know who it is. Thank the person for what they did. You can also give gifts yourself. You can gift other people memberships. We had probably 10 or 12 of those done last week where viewers ended up gifting more memberships. Yeah, we're a little past Christmas, but it's always a good season to give something to somebody who doesn't have it. Anyway, thank you, Moen. I appreciate that. All right, Jen. So disappointed with the game, not really shocked at the outcome. What has been dominating your train of thought now, knowing that Florida State's in this sort of limbo and they got a lot of bad press this last weekend?
Not a whole lot, actually. I don't know, and you guys could tell me more. I mean, I think anybody who really knows football, this game was possibly going to go this way. There were some players that said they were going to play and then decided at the end, like maybe 2 days before, this wasn't their best idea. I mean, you can't tell a bunch of kids that their 13 games didn't matter and then expect them to come play in this exhibition game.
Right.
When they want to go to the NFL, or expect them not to transfer out because you basically just told them their schedule sucks. The conference sucks and you can go undefeated again. And by the way, if you look at the top 12, it's nothing but SEC and
Right.
Big Ten teams and one ACC team, which was Florida State, right? So at the end of the day, I don't blame them, and I'm not upset with them, and I feel for the coaches. I feel for the kids who actually played. But really, this was an exhibition game. And the bad press really is, I want to say, by ESPN.
That's true. I didn't see any Fox people.
Nope. And they're not
dragging
going
on them at
to.
all.
They're not going to. And you guys tell me something that I've heard today. Has the SEC picked up interest in Florida State?
I've
Not-
heard from 2 people that said yes,
Yes.
but it's not something I can really report. It's not my
Right.
story, but I've heard that SEC might be coming back to protect their neighborhood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've heard it's gone from like 0 to 100, but at the end of the day, I think Florida State's had it with the Big Ten for about a year, maybe
Okay.
longer. I don't see that relationship getting repaired at all. But I also think that Florida State was maybe going for the judgment in their case to say it's all or nothing. And I don't think they were really talking to the ACC until today.
Oh, today they picked up again.
I do.
Okay.
Mhm.
Questions, guys?
Oof, can't ask too many questions about why you think this, but
Let's
You know,
not
just-
beat on Florida State
just
getting beat
in-
on, okay?
no. But just in
It's
terms
okay.
of
You can beat on it. I don't
like,
mind.
I'm not really into beating on people for stuff like that.
I mean, I think it's fine that the kids made those decisions. I don't think anyone's going to blame them for making their personal choices because
Right.
they're allowed to. I just think that, one thing to look at it from this perspective we have is what unintended consequences are there from the collection of all these independent decisions that these guys are making.
Well, not a lot of good ones. I mean,
Yeah,
some of them
I mean,
have been good. The ones that went to the transfer portal, a couple of them are back in it again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
A couple
wow.
of them
Okay.
went to FAMU. That coach left last night or the night before, so they're back in the transfer portal. I think some of it was an emotional decision, and I think that's a learning experience maybe for the coaching staff. Maybe after I think they had recruiting trips planned that day. And I think they just thought they were going to get in, I think it was maybe they'll rethink that next time. That's just where I would go, to try and like maybe rally. I know Coach Norvell was still there, but I think having their position coaches out on the road may have, maybe again, I can't. Hindsight is 2020, right?
It
But
doesn't seem like they're dialed in if they're doing recruiting right before the game.
well, no, this was right after the snub. So I think
Oh,
maybe
sorry. I
after the
apologize.
snub,
Okay.
yeah. So after the snub, I think, they just because they had already had these trips planned, maybe most of them were already on the road. Actually,
Right.
I think it was just Coach Norvell. Maybe the general manager was there. I'm not 100% for sure how many were still in the building, but I think it was just because it was unprecedented. I don't think anybody ever thought a Power 5 conference going undefeated would not get into the playoffs. So I think they went ahead and made those recruiting trips because of the window that you had. So I don't know, maybe again, that's just something to think about going forward, but hopefully they won't have to worry about that in 2025 is all I'm going to say.
Jen, was there any serious consideration with the Knowles skipping the bowl game and sitting out of this bowl game? Like, I'm thinking here, like, given where the Knowles are at with conference realignment, with the ACC, with all the stuff, that it might have been actually a play that they consider actually sitting this bowl game out to cause mass chaos. And like, and
So-
frankly, go ahead. Yeah.
I can agree with you on that. Like I was 100% all on board, like go out there or decline the invite or go out there and take a knee, right? Like I was totally for that. I was told they were kind of told they would pay money if they did that.
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah.
They would lose a ton of advertising.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I really don't think they had a choice.
What's the Holiday Bowl sued the Pac-12 for? Was it Stanford not showing up for a bowl game?
Sure. Yeah. It was a
During
couple
COVID?
$1 million.
And
Yeah,
I think it was
couple
like
million.
3. Yeah. But
This
you
one
know,
would
not
have been in
going
the
to one school.
millions. I've been told it
Yeah.
would have been in the millions. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like you think, like you don't know the result of the game before, right? But like Jen, you said before that you kind of felt based on the sit outs, the opt outs, and everything this was going to happen. Like the perceptions of the bowl loss are so painful, right? Like the 63-3 score and everything, like that leaves a lasting impression. It's not fair because you didn't even have your starters there, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of just probably weighing like, hey, you know, if it's a couple $1 million to skip this game or field the second or third string team and everything and just get totally housed by Georgia, what's the better of the two options really there? I'm sure that's probably been debated a lot in Florida State territory.
Well, it was technically the 3s and the 4s were their starters. And then I think the walk-ons had to come in at the end. These kids were like at prom last year at this time. I don't know what anybody would have expected. And by the way, because I'm from Memphis, I'm gonna give a big shout out to Brooklyn because I mean that kid, he literally was at prom here in Memphis at this time last year. Or actually in like May of last year, you know, I mean, I think he came back for his prom, maybe it was his winter formal. But I can't imagine like how hard that was. And I guess he could have sat out. I mean, what would have happened if everybody had sat out? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Georgia had, I mean, yes, they were missing Brock Bowers. They were missing some 2s. They may have been missing some. It certainly wasn't what Florida State was missing. And I know what ESPN is saying, but this is not the reality. I don't think of anybody who really watches the game. Yes, it looked bad, but I don't know what anybody really expected of this. I really don't. You know, again, they said Florida State couldn't be in because their quarterback play was bad, right?
They did. They actually pointed to that line.
Did anybody watch Jalen Milroe last night?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was just wondering.
Mhm.
I was confused.
You know, and for folks to understand and think about, these aren't robots playing the game. These are young men. Some folks still call them kids. I don't care what your talent level is, how good you are. You have to want it when you're playing in a game of this high caliber with that much talent going against you. And if your kids have just been completely demoralized by what happened and with all the departures over it and all the talk and all of that, you're not going to come into a game playing. I don't care if you had your first string, you probably still would have lost by a bit just because Georgia seemed to come in there with something that they wanted to prove.
Oh, for
Whereas
sure.
Florida State seemed to feel like we already proved everything and we got nothing for it. There's nothing left to prove. You know, and it was just, that was the difference of the two teams coming into that game. And it was blaringly evident. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the outcome, though, is going to work for Florida State. At the end of the day, they're going to end up in a better conference.
Yeah.
And we're going to a 12-team, hopefully, quotes, in 2 years, a 16-team playoff. And that'll solve all these major bowl game problems. That's
the administrator's view. Like, they don't care as much about the CFP, what happened this year, because that's all changing next year. But it's the rallying cry for the money folks and the people, you know, at the Capitol and all of that, just to kind of make this come together for them. But talking points for people and fans and everything, it matters. But yeah, I think Florida State's actually maybe in a better place overall because this happened. As crazy as that is, we're in crazy times. So, but yeah, it's sad to see for the kids because this is their time. Like for the rest of us, it's a small deal, but for them, it's a big deal.
And like what sucks is it taints the season. It really does. I mean, okay, this is theoretical, but if you sit out and everything, you don't play that game, then you're always that undefeated team that had a legit run at the championship. You could always say that we should have been national championship. When you lose, like it doesn't. I guess like in 5 years, nobody's going to care that everybody sat out. Nobody's going to care. They're going to see the result of the game. right? It's like, okay, that's all that's going to matter, and everyone's going to diminish the season for Florida State, and that's totally BS. It bothers me so much that you can get that kind of sit out and everything, and see a result like this. It just seems completely unfair, and and it seemed like this whole system, how the Noles had it set up, was just completely set up to fail. It's super disappointing as somebody that likes Florida State too, to see that too. I mean, it sucks for the Noles.
Yeah, I just I don't, I think, okay, so to me, I think the perception though now, I mean, yes, they lost horribly, and yes, it was ugly, but it was understandable. I mean, I think two things can be correct at the same time, right? But
I honestly think nobody's going to remember the game at all.
I don't think so.
Hugh says
I mean,
in 5 years, I don't think they'll ever refer back to that game. It'll disappear in the annals of bowl games, I think.
If Florida State joins the Big Ten, they will.
Yeah. But I also think that this was such an embarrassment for college sports to be, I mean, to be honest, I really do. And I think that the results last night added to it. Because you had two teams. I've said this on my Twitter, and I know it sounds like a troll, but you had two teams rewarded for losing, shockingly lost their second game. Sorry, going undefeated is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It is, especially nowadays. It's maybe not as hard in a G5 league, but I think you could even say, because everybody's relatively the same talent level, that is difficult as well. Why didn't they just throw the thing away and just make this playoff start this year? Imagine the playoff this year with Florida State and Georgia. I mean, it would just. That would draw mad eyeballs.
Absolutely, it would. And the thing is they were acting like Florida State doesn't bring eyeballs when they were talking about this. Like,
yeah, that's crazy.
Are you nuts? Are you kidding? Yeah, like that's insanity. Like, you think Washington brings the same amount of eyeballs? Which, by the way, I was cheering for Washington, guys. Don't get upset with me. I 100% was. Absolutely. I'm so excited. I mean, I have Texas fans that are very upset with me right now, but I'm sorry. No, I'm standing on principle right now. I'm not cheering for you, and I wasn't cheering for Alabama. Right. It's not your fault. The corruption wasn't your fault, but I will not cheer for you. And I'm so glad you lost.
So right now, Washington is your national champion too, right? Because Michigan shouldn't have even gotten in.
Well, Michigan colors look better with my skin tones. So
not Mason blue.
It does. It really does. But no, I'm kidding. I can be bought off, guys. I'm not gonna lie. So if any Washington fan wants to hit me up and send me some gear, hey, I'm here for that too.
Hey, Becky might do that, or Sergeant Pickles. They're good people.
Somebody, I don't know any Washington fans because I live in Memphis. So I have a lot of Michigan fans. They've been providing me the gear. So if you guys want to buy me off, hey, I'm here.
I gotcha. Moen, you've been very silent over there in the corner.
I've been working the system, Nate. I've been working the system. I got to make sure that we get Florida State blocked out for next year. So, especially now that she says she looks good in maize and gold. I don't think anybody looks
brother, here we go.
Yeah, she made an enemy with that one. That's why I was over here smiling. Going,
maize and blue.
She's got some rules to learn if they're coming up into the Big Ten.
All right. So this is an article that I saw come out yesterday. It actually had come out on Sunday by Ross Dellinger. Immaculate posted and reposted it on Twitter. I believe I also had retweeted it. But this article, he talks to the ADs for both Texas and Washington. And here's an interesting quote. We are in the middle of an evolution, talking about college football, but we are not anywhere close to the end. We haven't seen anything yet. That came from the Washington AD. So you have any thoughts on that? Because you're right in the middle of it now.
God, I don't know. I just think all this is so complicated for me. God. I don't know. I really don't.
And you you did mention or asked at least if you'd heard other people about the SEC. You
Mhm.
tell us what you're hearing about both the SEC and the Big.
So I've heard the SEC after the playoffs have now picked up the interest in Florida State.
Okay.
And again, this is you guys know this better than anybody. This stuff can change within minutes, but
Oh, sure.
that is what I've heard. But I've also heard again with the ACC wanted to do a negotiation because they certainly didn't want Florida State to go for the all or nothing, right? They didn't
Right.
want the all or nothing. Because if they were granted the all or nothing and got the nothing, other schools would just be free to be like, I'm gone too, right? You'd just
Right.
lose everybody. It would just fold. So they really wanted Florida State to sit down and do like a settlement, and Florida State was like, no, we're going to do the all or nothing. But then they started this tampering talk.
And who exactly are they accusing of tampering?
The Big Ten.
The Big Ten? Okay. Mo,
They're not.
They
Now,
gotta
this
prove
is
it.
just rumors. Yeah, again, this is just rumors, but I think Florida State got scared enough because they were like, shit, I guess we better get on the phone. So I think they are going to sit down for some sort of settlement talk
Okay.
at this point. I think that's ongoing. I don't see this going to court. I really don't. Not now. I
Well,
think
you
Florida
saw what
State wants
happened with the
out.
Pac-12, right? We've seen this movie. So
Yeah.
a settlement is always what everybody wants.
So you think that the Knowles and the ACC will settle
I do.
a way for the Knowles to get out of the conference? And, all the smoke was on the Big Ten, right, with the Knowles and everything, with all the drama with ESPN. So it
I
seems
still
to
think
be
it will be.
still looking like it's going to. I think that makes the most sense. I mean, as a Knoll fan, where's a better spot? Like, which one can set you up for future success better?
I say the Big Ten. I'm all for it. I've been for it for like a year. I've never been an SEC person. I don't understand that cult. I don't. It's not my thing. I just don't understand cheering for people in your conference. Like, I just don't get it. I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it. I hope that my rivals, like, can you imagine me cheering for Miami in any situation? It's not going to happen. And you want me to go to the SEC and then cheer for Florida? No, it's just not happening. It's not
But it's
ever
all
going to happen.
SEC all the time. You know that, Jen.
I mean, that usually comes from like the Vanderbilts, though, doesn't it? Like that.
I don't know. They see it when
They
go
all do
college
it. They
game-
really all
yeah,
do
they all
it.
do it. At college game days all over. They're constantly SECing.
Did you see the long snapper from LSU? Like, kind of talk smack to Jordan Travis yesterday.
Oh no. I didn't see that. That what you mean after
yeah.
the game?
Oh no, this is yesterday. Because Jordan Travis like put out something like a emoji, kind of like saying, "Well, Alabama lost,
Right.
second
the guy
time or
say?
something like that." He goes, it was really 63-3, and you post this or something like that, and it was like, sir, I don't know if I need to take you back in history, but that man beat your butt. You know what I mean?
We got a super chat here from Rock and Rant. Even Josh Pate, by the way, for $4.99. Thank you very much, Rock. Appreciate it. Super chat is very well appreciated here. Says even Josh Pate warning FSU fans, you're taking crying too far. I think FSU got screwed, but enough already. You've heard, I'm sure you've been hearing that from the beginning, right?
Oh yeah. So Josh Pate, look, I don't know, but this is the same ESPN talking point we've heard for the last 2 weeks. I don't think it's anything different. I don't know who he talks to, but I'm sorry, Florida State's not going to stop winning. You can forget it. You can absolutely forget that, especially after yesterday's results. And the Georgia game has nothing to do with that. Nothing. Every single player would have shown up to play in the playoff.
Absolutely.
Every single player. And you can sit there and you can whine and you can complain. You can be like, oh, you're whiny babies. Next year will be different. Well, next year, all those kids are graduated. Those kids don't get the same opportunity. This was wrong and it was done incorrectly. And I'm sorry. Hello, Jalen Milrose, 110 yards of offense. Please stop.
He struggled.
Brock Glenn had more yards in that ACC championship game that they said was just an abysmal showing than Jalen Milroe did.
But let's talk about that. There's a major fall in talent level from the starting quarterback and even the second string. Ask Ohio State. Ask Utah. I mean, the list is forever long. That there is such an extreme differential between the first and the second string quarterback of any of the top 40 teams. So how did we get here where there was such? My guess is because the transfer portal lets people go to other schools and play immediately. That means the guys holding the clipboard are kind of like NFL backup QBs. They're pretty much for show.
So can somebody answer me this? This is what I'm hearing. I mean, just to get into the transfer portal stuff, right? When we talk about that, like, I think the big schools, and kind of like some stuff I've heard talked about, the big schools are not going to recruit these high school kids anymore.
Yep. I mean, largely.
They're just going to go to transfer portal.
Exactly. Okay. I mean, if you think about it, like you hear about this, these coaches who are spread so thin already have to continue to recruit these high school kids all year. They're now asking for like $10,000 for visits. For visits.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't like a commitment. This isn't a kid going to the school. You're not paying him $10,000. No. That costs like $1 million to $2 million, right? For these big time kids. They're not developed. They're, then they can flip the night before signing day and you've spent all this money, all this time for nothing, or they actually come to your school and you got to pay them $2 million, right? They're not committed in any year, or they're not developed in any year. They can just transfer out. So you
actually think it's the reverse, Jen. My opinion is that it's the reverse. I think the big schools are going to get the best players still. They're going to chase them, and the other schools are going to get what they leave out. That's my opinion. What do you guys think?
I think that's somewhere in the middle, honestly. I think that the big schools, everyone's going to offer the best high school recruits, and they're going to go to the best schools. That's not going to change, but the time allocation of recruiting high school athletes versus transfer portal and your money allocation from your funding arm, from your collective, your NIL package that you can offer the kids is going to go to the transfer portal players because those are sure things. Like really, they're a proven commodity. And like we've seen enough of these quarterbacks that have transferred over, like your Penixes, your Bo Nix, that are winning at the highest level. That's the way to do it. That's the model right now. So I think that there's going to be a lot more financial movement to the transfer portal than to the high school ranks and time allocation. So I'm with you, Jen.
Moen.
Yeah, I think it's more of a supplemental thing for bigger, larger brands. Quarterbacks, you're right. Quarterbacks, it seems transfer portal is the new way forward for quarterbacks. But every other position, I still think you're going to build. You're still going to build through recruiting. I mean, the big schools still have the advantage in it. They're still going to do it. Not every 5-star pans out, but a lot of 5-stars do pan out. Big Ten, for example, Ohio State, they're still going to go out there and recruit 4- and 5-star wide receivers. And when the room gets too full, they'll transfer out. They'll go to other programs. So I still think you're going to build through recruiting. You're going to supplement a little bit through the portal for big schools.
So Moen, you're no, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Go ahead, Jen. No, go.
You're an Ohio State guy, right?
Yeah.
What's going on with this Will Howard kid?
It's a possibility, but since the Liberty kid went into the portal, that might be the running number.
Everyone's calling that kid right now, or his agent.
Yeah, but Will Howard was Will Howard was to USC 100% until that kid played
Yeah.
in that bowl game. And then once that kid played so well in that bowl game, now Will Howard's back in the mix. So
And his
we'll
stats
see.
just scream Jaden Daniels right at you.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I like the kid from Liberty better than I like Will Howard, but
Really? Okay, so that means Will Howard could fall to Miami. That would be unfortunate.
well,
you
Miami
imagine-
couldn't hit the figure that Cam Ward wanted. That was the problem with Cam Ward. Cam Ward had a figure that he gave everybody, and nobody was willing to hit it. That's why he
He's
declared for the
NFL.
draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he went to the NFL. And by the way, I was always a DJU girl. You can see that on my show. I've been pumping that since day one because I just want to beat Clemson with DJU. I think that'd be fun.
There we go. Right there.
That's pretty sick, Jen.
Could you imagine going from Manhattan to Miami? Like that, just the culture shock of living in Manhattan, Kansas, and playing there and being part of that, and then going to Miami and having to be part of
Can
that.
you imagine being a good quarterback wanting to play for Mario?
Not until he can
No.
figure out his timeouts and his end of game play calling. All right, here's a super chat here from Seminole Sean 1972. Thanks so much for being here, Seminole Sean. I'm gonna remind everybody, if you're new to the show, please subscribe on YouTube, follow us all on Twitter, and then turn on your notifications so that way you know when our shows and other information we put out about realignment and whatnot are happening. That's how Jen found us. So I know it works. So the narrative is prepared a couple weeks before Travis got hurt on game day. When Kirk said Florida State was 5th or 6th, the injury only gave them the excuse. That's to you, Immaculate.
That's to me. I'm not even sure how to answer to that.
All right, you don't have to answer it. Somebody else can, and then I'll give you time for something else.
Yeah, they wanted to leave Florida State out. They wanted to leave it
Yep.
for the ratings. I mean, Jen already mentioned that. It's the craziest thing in the world, being like a University of Utah fan and hearing that Florida State's getting left out because of ratings. Because you can plug Texas and Bama in.
Well,
but that's really good. It was about that too, right?
Bama had the number
juiciest
one
message.
ratings all season long. Like if you were to pull up all the ratings of other games, they had the number one. So yeah, people say that didn't come into it. I think Herb Street said that it's garbage that people think that happened, and I find that laughable. That no one ever once was talked to like, hey, how much do you think we'll get paid with this school and that school? Like that's all that thing is. It's just about making the money. So I don't know why people think like the executive director wouldn't be thinking about that, or the presidents of the board that run it wouldn't be thinking about how much money their schools are going to get. So I think it mattered. And like you're saying, were they waiting for something to happen, or did they just think that Florida State would lose once and it never happened? I don't know. But it was certainly convenient. It just kind of created a conundrum.
What's weird? It seems like I've turned on a dime too. Like, a week
was.
before this comment, like, Seminole Sean, you mentioned this, like the week before, everyone was like, Florida State's a shoo-in. You can't ever leave an undefeated, P5 team out. And like, that was a consensus across everywhere. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it was just different. It changed.
Right.
It's almost like it was a wholesale communication from the top of the house.
I think for the whole week, nobody talked about Florida State for an entire week before the playoff game. You didn't even know who Florida State was for that whole week. It was a run up to the college football playoff, and they almost never mentioned FSU.
It was bizarro, but I'm talking about before they got left out of the playoff too.
Yeah.
Like people like Josh Pate and stuff said, you can never leave a Florida State out. The next week, he's changed his mind.
Right.
But he said, oh, I'm free to change my mind. I mean, everyone changed their mind. Like, why did they change their mind? It just is. It's almost weird, like orchestrated. It's definitely strange.
There we go.
Do you mean collusion?
Go ahead, Jen.
Does that mean collusion? Look. The day Jordan Travis got hurt, the day of the UNA game, the morning on game day, they were floating that Florida State should be left out because should Alabama beat Georgia? Look, it's all on tape. It's all on tape. I'm not lying. Should Alabama beat Georgia, Florida State should be left out, even with Jordan Travis. Jordan wasn't hurt yet. So they started this. They're absolutely bullshitting. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say.
You're okay. It's an adult program. You're all right.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have a mouth like a sailor.
It's okay.
My bad.
It's okay.
I try and be a lady most of the time. It just comes out. So yeah, they're lying to everybody. They want to tell us that our eyes and ears didn't hear what we heard all during the year. And now they're like, oh my God, he got hurt. Now we can say the injury excuse.
Yeah.
No. They saw Georgia play Auburn. They saw Georgia struggle a little bit, even though Georgia's a great team. Everybody knows that. But here's what they needed to do. Alabama looked like shit most of their games all year.
Yes.
Okay. So they were like, well, if Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, they've got to get in. Right. And I don't think they could get away with leaving out. Well, honestly, Washington fans, I'm looking at you. I really am. If Michael Penix had got hurt, you would have been in the same position we are.
Yeah.
I think 100%.
100%.
Had anybody ever heard of that out clause before this year?
No, not one time.
Nobody knew that was in the agreement.
And by the way, TCU's quarterback was hurt last year. They had a loss. They didn't win their conference championship game and still got in.
And beat Michigan. So
explain me that.
Daniel Gygax, thank you so much, Daniel, for being a member of the channel. Thank you. And your super chat, I really appreciate it. He says an FSU ACC settlement would set a horrible precedent. It will allow everyone else out of the gore. I'll answer that. In my opinion, I think that the settlement is what they need, or else the whole conference is going to disappear in a lawsuit. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think?
I'd say horrible or planned. I mean, do you see any brand new ESPN commercials talking about the ACC? Do you see any brand new commercials from ESPN talking about their vaunted relationship with the SEC? They're not putting anything into the ACC. Like you said, we just learned about the out clause. They were keeping that secret.
Right.
So I think the ESPN's been planning on getting out of the ACC business now for a little while. I think that they thought they had until 2027 to break this thing down. I think the SEC thought they had until 2027 before they'd have to bring over some schools. And this is all being pushed on everybody more quickly than they thought. The PAC, the ACC, it's just all happening faster than anyone wanted. So it's like you're saying at the SEC, if they're interested, they're getting a little bit worried if they're trying to declare that they have tampering and all that on Big Ten. I doubt they do, but they're worried about you joining the Big Ten.
So I think the SEC is interested in order to get maybe Florida State to that settlement table. I think that comes into that tampering thing. I think this is just the ACC would not be suggesting tampering against the SEC.
Right.
Because they kind of work in tandem, guys. I don't know if anybody understands that because of the ESPN stuff.
Right.
They really do. They're not going to accuse tampering of the SEC, right? So I really think that maybe the SEC's interest is to, well, one, maybe they are playing defense, and I think
they should.
Well, I think they should, but I've gotten so, I don't want to go to the SEC. And it's not about that I'm scared of it. I just don't want to be with those weirdos.
When we were talking about this in June and July, I actually thought the SEC was a natural fit. I know they'd been talking for decades. But the longer we've gone down the road, Vince Knoll, somebody else that we have on our show, on Garnet and Old, he told me one time offline that the feeling was that the fans want to go to the Big Ten, but there was some push from the administration looking at the SEC, and you have to look at traveling costs, right? For Florida State, traveling is going to be an impact. They also have more time.
We have to go to Boston College, though. We have to go to Syracuse.
But now you're going to Washington and Oregon.
Yeah, and or Cal and
it's a 6-hour
Stanford,
flight.
or Cal and
Well,
Stanford.
I hope you better pray they don't make it into the SEC or the Big Ten. They will just drag you guys down.
They already are.
Yeah. Ute or Moen, you guys have any other comments on that?
I think this would set a horrible precedent, but I think that the ACC is so screwed, it doesn't matter. I think this thing's blowing up no matter how you shake it. So this is just going to lead to its destruction maybe a little bit sooner, but it's the writing's on the wall. It's been there for months. The ACC is completely toast. It really is. So I don't know. I mean, this is just one way out, but there's going to be some escape hatch, whether it's this or something else. It's just like, what's the speed of it? That's the only question.
So it's a risk reward thing. Do you really want to risk Florida State getting out at $0 and then everybody getting out at $0? Or would you rather take $150 million, divvy it up against the people who aren't leaving, and actually have a conference to rebuild from?
Yep.
Because if Florida State gets out at 0, the conference explodes. It's
wide open.
But the 150 payout is kind of false. It's a false hope because they're not going to give that to the schools the very next year in a payout.
No, it's going to be tiered.
Those millions down for 13 years. They might this next year get 60,000 of that settlement. So if people are expecting these huge windfalls to go to these conferences to stay and reconstitute themselves, it's not. It's a pipe dream to think it's going to be 500 million. And schools, Boston College is going to cash a check next year for $50 million. That would never happen.
It's not that you get it all at once, you don't. But what it becomes is something that you can show, like say if you want to go get a loan to build some new infrastructure there, you want to build a new building, you could say, we have this money coming in for the next however long.
Sure.
And so that can get you equity into something else. So yeah, it's not that you're getting this pile of cash, but you are getting the power of that cash, if that makes sense.
Right. And you know you're going to lose 3 or 4 teams. So it's whatever figure it ends up being times 4, times 5, times 6. That is a huge chunk of change for these smaller schools. And it's a war chest to rebuild the ACC with.
Yeah, they don't want to let this go to a court. I mean, this is going to be a settlement.
If they
I think the settlement's going to be significantly less than you guys think.
I think the settlement most is going to be.
I think it's going to be significantly less. I don't think there's going to be a pot of gold for Boston College at the end of the day. I think that's just wishful thinking, guys.
I agree.
Really,
I think 50 to 100 million. 50 to 100
million
million. If you think it's lower than that, that's cool. I just think that's where it's going to be.
That's where I think it's going to be.
50 to
I
100.
actually had somebody tell me about the same thing. I was thinking 120. I was thinking they would settle.
I said
just
100
on
last
that.
week, Dan.
You did.
I did.
You did. I was thinking 120 just for the exit fee. Like I would think Florida State would come to that, but I'm now hearing that they've been so just we're out. I think Florida State really thinks they're gonna get the jurisdiction. I think they're gonna they could have gotten the all or nothing call, and I think they might get a little less than 100, but I'm not for sure.
So we're talking the exit fee. We're not talking about unbinding the grant of rights, though, right?
I think the grant of rights is not going to be. Yeah, it's the total.
You're talking about everything all in one.
Everything together.
And the moment the rest of the schools take it, the gore is gone. They're going to have to renegotiate. The ESPN's not going to keep that thing into 2027. So
not without Florida State.
And they're going to force a renegotiation. I don't care if they have 15 teams. You still have to have equitable value of those teams. You can't just say, we're taking any 15 and we're good. That's not.
They really have to decide what they're going to do by 2025. So it's not like they got 4 years to sort this out. Florida State has given an intent they're leaving. I'm almost 100% positive they're leaving before August 2nd, but this year. After that, who knows when the thing begins to expand and sort of fall apart.
Do you guys know how screwed the remaining schools are? Like
we talked about it last week.
Yeah, like I'm just telling you guys, like financially.
Yes and no.
What contract they're going to re-sign when they renegotiate that thing when Florida State and Clemson are out. We're talking about $15 million a year. I'm telling you guys, like the Pac-12 is getting offered low 20s when you had Oregon and Washington. This is going to be like 12 to 15.
So if you're settled that,
yeah. I mean, if you take their situation just on its own, yeah, it's really bad. If you look at the whole situation going on right now with the NCAA and some other schools and where other movements might be happening, things that could happen, I think they have a chance to create something there. I think Notre Dame, Stanford, and Duke are on that road. But if that doesn't work out, yeah, the ACC is in pretty bad shape.
But like, if you've got Stanford, I mean, they didn't even warrant $20 million in the Pac-12. Like, I'm telling you guys, this is like a significantly lower valuation going forward than you would imagine. Like, seriously, like this is it's like $12-15 million a year in media rights for like
I think
the
I
ring.
said
So-
15 million last week.
Where do you guys think Clemson is actually going to go? Because I've heard like Clemson's working behind the scenes too, just like Florida State is. They're just not as loud about it. Obviously, we've had this conversation a million times.
Right.
But I mean, the traction with Clemson is not picking up right now.
No.
At all.
Big 12.
And I think you can tell that. Yeah. Okay, Immaculate. I'm right with you. I'm right with you.
Well, spin me a narrative that they make it into the SEC or the Big Ten. I cannot
can't.
see a narrative where the SEC wants them.
If they were, they would have already been announced. They would have done what Florida State's been doing.
Exactly
Yep.
right. Yeah,
They got the money to do it.
I think
That's a
their
huge tell.
silence. I think their silence has been deafening.
I agree.
Honestly.
Yep.
I think the best scenario for Clemson is if Florida State goes to the SEC, because then the Big Ten is going to be calling Clemson and Miami.
You think Clemson goes with Miami?
If Florida State doesn't go to the SEC, they're in big trouble though.
Clemson could be the Oregon pick if Florida State is not the Oregon pick. That's all.
I thought Miami was the Oregon pick. You have two Oregon picks?
I'm not a Miami fan, but I mean, if you're doing that, Clemson and Miami, you could say Miami was the university pick. I would actually probably say Clemson and like Georgia Tech, but that's just so bad. I mean, I think you take Miami for the market. I would agree with them. Clemson, Miami. It's kind of fumbling the ball a little bit, but that's probably what they do because they're going to need one big brand that makes Fox happy. Right now. That's Florida State, like much more so than Clemson would be. So if they're taking Clemson, it might have to be like a Clemson Miami pairing to make that pay. Because if Clemson goes bad, their ratings are bad. I mean, it's just how it is. But between them and Miami, probably at least one of them would do well. So I think he's right there, but I don't see that happen. I think FSU is going to become Fox Sports University.
Jen, you're not going to like to hear this, but I'm almost certain Miami's getting in the Big Ten. It makes so many sense. It makes so much sense on so many levels, based on the market itself, and the idea of brand equity. Like, you leverage the brand equity of the city of Miami. So, Ohio State fans like Moan can go travel to Miami and have a nice time and everything. They're not going to Tallahassee, right? Or Clemson. They're going to Miami and everything. So I think there's a lot to offer. Their AAU. Seriously, if you look at it, Miami is a strong, strong candidate here.
I agree, but Miami needs like a year or two. I don't think Miami gets invited with Florida State. I just don't. I don't see that.
Well, Greg Pflugar has reported that he has heard, some rumblings on the inside that Miami is sort of promoting themselves, right?
I'm sure. They're
Optioning
always
them
doing
up
that.
there. But I think you said it. The silence speaks louder than anything else. The fact they did not go in a coordinated way and push against ESPN and the ACC together, strengthening their bonds and make it easier to get out, tells you everything you need to know about where Clemson currently stands.
I think Miami needs a stadium. Miami's fan following is sorry. Empty stadiums on ESPN or Fox is not what they want to see. I'm just saying, I know I throw a lot of shade, but that is just the truth, guys. Like, if you can hate on me all you want to, but you do need a stadium and you do need to have fans in the stand, and stop doing BOGO tickets.
So look at UCLA. They can't ever sell out.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to sell out even in the Big Ten. I mean, they're
but
half capacity maybe.
But again, like Congo just said in the chat, Miami fans do not travel. They don't travel. They're not. And again, with UCLA, but UCLA basketball brings something. Their basketball fans travel. I mean, again, I know it's going to sound like I'm just sitting here trolling them, Miami fans spend more time on the internet than they ever have inside of a stadium.
Seems like it.
All right, guys, we have gone long. We're already 10 minutes over my 2 hours. Jen, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you,
Love to have
guys.
you. And we'll do this again, okay?
Of course, anytime.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, have a great
Bye.
night.
Yeah.
Happy
Jen.
New Year. All right, guys, those were great interviews, all of them. And taking that extra time, I really think is important. Anything you want to say on the way out as we wrap this show up?
Fascinating that there is a little bit of smoke that Florida State and the SEC are talking. Like, that's been dead silent. You heard it here. Yeah, that's very interesting.
It's pure negotiation from Florida State's part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A negotiating tactic for sure.
Right now, if you're talking a lot, if there's a lot coming out about you, you're not feeling good.
Right.
So when I hear,
Absolutely true.
Miami has moved up and they're talking all this, I'm like, okay, but they're not feeling good right now with the situation. Clemson was doing the same thing. I think there's the ones who don't do a lot of talking is North Carolina. The ones who's not doing a lot of talking is Virginia. In fact,
They're
the
sort of
Virginia
in a
president's
different-
sitting there next to Phillips. But does
Yeah.
anyone think that Virginia wouldn't leave? Like, so that's why I'm saying, like, yeah, I take everything being said right now with a grain of salt. Everyone's kind of just making money off the situation.
And
Nothing
I
against
think
our
that's
friend
why-
Greg. I believe him, but I'm just
Sure.
not a big fan of Miami.
I think that, like, we know enough about this, like, you can do your own analysis to see what makes sense. Like,
Yep.
if I'm an analyst and I'm working for one of the conferences, the media companies, that I'm doing that analysis and providing it to the teams and the conferences and everything else. So you have to do that. You have to go through that. It's not just what somebody says on the side. Does it make sense based on what you're doing, what you're seeing, and what you know that matters? And we know a lot of things that matter. We talked to Bob Thompson, guys. We talk to people that make these decisions and know, right? So we've got a lot of information. We'll be doing a lot of analysis on these schools going forward, but crazy times ahead.
Moen.
No, Miami is. There's a specific reason why they're looking at Miami, but I won't get into what it is because it's not something you're going to find on a chart. It's something that it was explained to me that I didn't understand it. Even after 15 minutes of it being explained to me, I was just like, "Okay, I believe you." So I'm just
We're
putting
talking
that
like
out there.
the Big Ten in Miami here.
Yes,
Yeah.
the big Miami to the Big Ten.
That was Greg last week said Miami popped up and it was separate from Florida State. So they're both
One thing.
popped up, but in different veins.
Yeah.
To the Big Ten.
There's talk right now, but I would say if you're going to relook at that talk at some point in time, relook at it when we get a price for Florida State. When that price is known, when we see how high or how small it is, start to see who is being talked about at that point. That's when I think it's going to matter because schools that may not be worrying about it right now, they just, what's the point right now? They're not struggling, they're not pushing for it. But I think when there's a price, you're going to see other schools start to step into the game and start to have talks, and things might get leaked out, and we'll see that. That's all I'm saying. Until then, we're all just kind of, doing our opinions. But I think shit's really going to hit the fan when that price gets determined either by settlement or by judgment.
Anything else you want to say, Immaculate or Moen? We're doing a show tomorrow night, 8 Eastern. I'm not sure. Can you make that, Immaculate, or is that a day you're working?
I think I'm fine.
Okay. So tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll be here. I think Moen's going to be here too. We'll get more into this realignment stuff. We really wanted to do it today, as a catch up on the bowl season and also see where we were with the college football playoff. So we appreciate you being here. It's been a great show, longer than I anticipated. So all those that stuck around, thank you very much. Other than that, everybody stay out of trouble, travel safe, and we will see you guys tomorrow night. Peace out.